And opinions expressed by the guests and contributors on Conklin and Company are not necessarily those of 13 ABC. Now, Conklin and Company continues with Take 3, commentary and analysis from our panel of political contributors.
Welcome back, everyone. The way forward, 2014, the city of Toledo under a new mayor, D. Michael Collins, and a person who wrote extensively about the mayor's race and now writing about what the city of Toledo is, where it might be going forward, is Keith Burris, columnist for The Blade. Good to see you again, Keith.
Good to see you, Lee.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, so D. Michael Collins embarks on a journey to Harvard this past week.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure who was doing the teaching there. But we know that Mike's a professor, a college professor, law enforcement over at UT, and other newly elected mayors got together, a think tank of sorts, and you wrote about that. What do you think he brings back from Harvard for the city moving forward in 2014?
Well, Harvard has these programs for new congressmen, for mayors, for new governors. It started with members of Congress, and they bring staff people and very experienced people to really talk about, I guess the term of art is best practices. And that's right up Mike Collins' alley. He's a guy who's very interested in how to actually do the administrative part of the job, how to run the departments of the city well, better. So I think he'll be looking for ideas about how to actually make the functioning, the structure and function of local government better, and that's what that program is.
And so it's going to be fascinating to see how a district councilman goes from someone who is kind of the watchdog, watching everything that came in, every proposal, and we know he would go over things with a fine-tooth comb, and now you're the man on that 22nd floor now.
Yeah.
And you're taking a look at things, and okay, I have this huge pot of soup I have to deal with here.
Right.
And where do you see that going? He talks about tidy towns first, economic development, raising the pay. I mean, first order of business for him.
Well, I think you hit on the two key things. He's a guy who has played a maverick and watchdog role, and he's a detail guy. And he knows that he's going to have to step back. He told me, I know I'm going to have to change. He's going to have to step back, look at the larger picture, not be just a district guy, and also not be in the role of kind of the critic, maverick, looking at the holes and things, but the big vision, big picture guy. So that's a transformation anyone going from that job would have to make, but also it's a personal transformation for Mr. Collins, and I think he knows that about himself, which is a good thing.
How important is it that he let people do their jobs, whether it be a new economic development director, a new chief of staff, that he doesn't micromanage?
Great question. It's important that he not micromanage. I think that if you were looking at Mayor Bell and saying, what was maybe a flaw in his management style, it was that he appointed his people and then he trusted them so totally that there was almost never any second look or
a detachment of sorts?
A detachment, yeah. And here the problem is the opposite. Someone who's very detail-oriented, who's going to have to trust more, step back, and I think that brings up the next thing, which is the kind of people he needs to hire. But assuming he gets really good people, then he's got to step back maybe a little more than would be his normal disposition.
Could we have a bigger contrast, Keith, between Mike Bell and Mike Collins?
No, you couldn't. I mean, one of my favorite things is when asked their best Toledo memories, Mike Bell said Fridays in the park, and Mike Collins said serving mass for Bishop Sheen. So, I mean, you can't come up with more contrasting people than that.
What about economic development? He proposes raising that pay to $132,000, thinking you can get somebody maybe from the private sector who will be willing to come in. Yeah. And you talked about letting that person do their job. Are those people out there who want to come in and work in city government?
I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough to find people from the private sector, people with corporate experience, new blood, that will come in and work maybe with the old bloods, the old hands, the second timers, the retreads, so-called. But Mr. Collins' idea is to take the retreads and have them kind of mentor new people who aren't experienced in government. I mean, if you're picking a chief of staff, for example, you can't pick a guy who's a successful corporate executive and say, now help me run a city. You've got to know something about the city. So I think it's going to be hard to get, for example, the economic development person. I'm all in favor of him paying that person more, but that's still not a lot of money. And so anybody he attracts from the private sector is probably making a sacrifice.
Going to take a pay cut.
Take a pay cut, have less privacy, maybe work longer hours. So that's a tough sell.
Yeah. Where's the good in that, right? Oh, the satisfaction of seeing your city
being a good
come
citizen,
to life. Yeah.
Giving something back.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now, a lot of chatter of late about this airport proposal. Doc Treese and his sons been in communication with your newspaper about this. And Mike Collins says, hey, if they come to me with a solid business plan, why wouldn't I listen? The airport has lost money the last 2-3 years. But where are we on this? And do you see this story and this idea having legs going forward in 2014?
I think the idea of we've got to look at the airport and look at whether there's another and better way. That story has legs. I'm not sure the Treese's proposal, such as it is, I'm not sure that has legs because the proposal itself doesn't have legs so far. They have not put forward a business plan, and there's no reason to believe they know much about airports. They're they're investment counselors, and I'm not sure you would hire a guy who's been running an airport to manage your investments. So,
Doc Treese, though, does have some background in aviation, right? As a pilot.
He's a flyer pilot, but I mean, I drive a car. I couldn't run GM. So I think until they put on the board, on the table, a real business plan and some evidence that they really understand the gravity of the situation, the scope of the job, and what they have to learn about airports, I'm not sure they're the guys. But I do think they've done us a service, done the city a service, by sort of putting on the table, hey, can we do something better at the airport?
Option. Privatizing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating stuff. Look forward to what happens in 2014 under a new mayor, D. Michael Collins, and what happens in other aspects of the news as well. Keith Burris will be writing about it in the Toledo Blade. Keith, thanks very much. As always, make it a great Sunday, everybody. See you next week on Conklin & Company, and all this week on 13 ABC Action News.